seconds away on Studio 5, Faith on Trial.
The most basic human right of all, the right to believe.
In the much-anticipated sequel to God's Not Dead. And then,
I really think that relevancy really comes back down to authenticity.
the hottest holy man around. We're sitting down with the minister who hangs out with Justin Bieber and pastors Kanye West. Plus, the sound of Bethel fills Studio 5, which starts right now.
You are out of order. I charge you with contempt.
I accept the charge because I have nothing but contempt for these proceedings. If we're going to insist that a Christian's right to believe is subordinate to all other rights, then it's not a right.
That is a compelling court scene from God's Not Dead 2. Studio 5 was the only show on the film set in Arkansas. We're taking you behind the scenes. But first, let's get started with a look at trending stories we're following for you this week. It is your top 5 from Studio 5. At number 5, Hillsong Church joins TBN to launch a ministry channel. Pastor Brian Houston says it will be a 24/7 operation, exalting Jesus and empowering people. Number 4, Oprah Winfrey's latest series takes viewers behind the walls of the megachurch. The scripted drama called Greenleaf comes to OWN in June.
That is enough.
At number 3, ABC has pulled the plug on its new drama Kings and Prophets after only 2 episodes. The show was based on the Old Testament, but the network scrapped it, following complaints about the show's sexual and violent content. At number 2,
That drum is your heartbeat.
the wait is over. A sneak peek at the new Ben-Hur film is out. Studio 5 was in Rome, as the film was shot at the same soundstage as the original 1958 film. And at number 1, congratulations to Lecrae, or should I say Dr. Lecrae. The rapper and author received an honorary doctorate in music from Canada Christian College during his tour stop in Toronto. And those are your top 5 from Studio 5. God's Not Dead was the highest grossing independent film of 2014, raking in more than $60 million at the box office. You could call it the little engine that could film that surprised everyone, including its creators. That's opened the door to God's Not Dead 2, starring Melissa Joan Hart, and Studio 5 was the only show on the set for the filming. PureFlix crews turned the Arkansas State House into a soundstage and the setting for God's Not Dead 2, starring Melissa Joan Hart.
What's happening in this particular script is happening, I think, all around the country, and you know, I think that people are being persecuted for their beliefs.
Studio 5 was on set with Melissa Joan Hart, who plays Grace, a teacher who finds herself on trial for her faith after simply answering a student's question.
Yes. Isn't that sort of like what Jesus meant when he said that we should love our enemies?
Yes. The writer of the Gospel of Matthew records Jesus as saying, "You have heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you will be children of your Father in heaven," which indicates a commitment to nonviolence. Dr. King confirmed the link, describing his inspiration from Scripture, saying, "Christ furnished the spirit and motivation, while Gandhi furnished the method."
Except that didn't work. Jesus got himself killed and everybody knows that.
Well, so did Dr. King. So I guess it just depends on how you measure success. This was a calling for me to do this. I felt like this was a mission for me to go on and to, you know, stand up for my beliefs and be a little bit louder about my faith and to let people know what my faith is.
Grace, this is exactly what we were hoping for. I mean, this is the part where you say you're sorry, thank your lawyer, go back to your classroom, pick up your life, and move on.
I can't do that.
Why?
I gave an honest answer to a student's legitimate question in history.
Grace, Grace, you don't want to do this. it's the wrong decision.
Is it? I would rather stand with God and be judged by the world than stand with the world and be judged by God. I am not going to be afraid to say the name Jesus.
God's Not Dead is in theaters as of April 1st, and here's a Studio 5 scoop. Stick around through the film's closing credits, and you'll get a preview of what's coming next. Can you say God's Not Dead 3? Still ahead on Studio 5, Rich Wilkerson.
Headlines come and go, but long after I'm gone, I hope that people say that Rich Wilkerson Jr. was a servant of God, that he loved his wife, and that he was a local church pastor.
The pastor turned reality star still keeping it real when it comes to preaching the gospel. He's been called the hottest holy man around, and his spotlight only increased after officiating the wedding of Kanye West and Kim Kardashian. We're sitting down with the husband, pastor, author, and reality star, Rich Wilkerson Jr., for this week's Studio 5 interview.
The gospel is anything but fair.
Rich Wilkerson is a popular preacher and the author of the much-celebrated book, Sandcastle Kings, Meeting Jesus in a Spiritually Bankrupt World. By the way, Kanye West designed the book's cover. Before we even get to the book, there's praise for the book, and I look at Kim Kardashian West, Brian Houston. How do these all come together?
Well, you know what? I think that's one of the cool things about this book. You know, this book is really a story. It's one chapter of the Bible, Luke chapter 7. And really what you read in Luke chapter 7 is 4 different stories. And what you see is you see Jesus invade these spaces. Some were followers of God, others were not. And I like to think the book is a story about Christ colliding with culture. And so I love that the very beginning starts out with so many different voices that are coming around it.
Wilkerson is often called the celebrity's pastor. His Instagram feed includes photos with stars like Maxwell, Justin Bieber, Kanye West, and the Kardashians. He made headlines for officiating Kim and Kanye's magazine cover wedding. What is it about your delivery of the message you think that allows people like a Kanye West to design the cover, to seek you out? What is it about your delivery? Because there are lots of ministers delivering the gospel. Sure. What is it that's drawing them?
I really have no idea, you know. I think the big buzzword that you hear time and time again is, you know, we all want to be relevant. But, you know, I really think that relevancy really comes back down to authenticity. Sometimes we think relevancy is like, we kind of use it as a trendy word, like it's about here and now. But the message of Jesus is 2,000 years old. I think that book is the oldest message there is. It's the gospel. It's the good news. However, I think methods, you know, from time and time, they change and they shift. But if we want to be relevant, being relevant, I think always comes down to just be you. I think what I've discovered from our generation, or millennials, if you will, is that they don't like fake. And what I mean by fake is they want you to just to be honest, transparent with the good, the bad, even the ugly.
Grace, by definition, is the unmerited favor of God, meaning you're getting what you don't deserve.
Rich and his wife pastor VU Church in Miami, which began in 2007 as a young adult gathering called Rendezvous.
Our church is a fun church, and I think there's so many different people that come through our doors, and we've had, you know, famous people come through. We've also had people that you don't know their name, and everyone counts and everyone matters. And someone asked me the other day, you know, what do you want people to say about you? And I said, you know, headlines come and go, but long after I'm gone, I hope that people say that Rich Wilkerson Jr. was a servant of God, that he loved his wife, and that he was a local church pastor. I think the local church is what I am most passionate about.
You said in one article I read, I don't think God has called us to do hard stuff. I think he's called us to do impossible stuff. Yeah. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, you know, I think sometimes I hear so many Christians, and I've even said this kind of stuff, man, this is so hard. But I think we got to get the vocabulary down right, because I think we're saying the wrong thing. And that is, you know, you're saying it wrong. God hasn't called you to do hard stuff. God has called you to do impossible stuff. And the reason why I use the word impossible is because if it's impossible, it requires you to be fully dependent upon him. And I don't want, honestly, at this point in my life, any area of my life to be able to be accomplished just on my own. I don't want to walk in my strength. I want to walk in the grace of God. And the thing with grace is that you don't get the grace that you want. You get the grace that you need. You don't get grace for tomorrow. You get grace for today. and it makes you completely, utterly dependent upon Jesus. And I want to live my life in a way that I'm in such deep water that unless Jesus shows up, hey, I'm gonna sink.
Hey!
Hey, how are you?
Hey, I'm good.
Rich and his wife took a dive into new territory with their reality series, Rich in Faith.
What is he doing here?
It follows their work, trying to expand their church and their family.
What's he saying?
I'll call you in a little bit. All right, bud. Bye.
What I do think about reality TV is I think that it's a language of our culture. So love it or hate it, it's kind of here right now. And I just want to be one of those kind of people that uses every space that we possibly can to promote the gospel. And if this is a way that we're communicating messages in 2015, I want to make sure that we're invading that space. Whatever we avoid, the devil will invade. And so it's really easy to curse the darkness. I think it takes some real believers to say, let's light a candle in the midst of darkness.
My last question for you. You face a lot of criticism.
I do?
You do. And I imagine it's coming with, with people not even seeing this show. I cover a lot in the entertainment world. People criticize it before they even see it. How do you handle that?
I think as I get older, hopefully I'm getting better at it, To really be honest with you, I think ever since we stepped into ministry, I can remember just early days, 22, 23 years of age, starting youth ministry. And, our ideas back then were unconventional. So there was always a level of criticism. So I think you kind of grow with it. I think my prayer as a leader as I get older is, God, give me thick skin, but give me a softer heart. And what I mean by that is that stuff can get on you. You just don't want stuff to get in you.
Still ahead on Studio 5.
I'm no longer a slave to fear.
The voices behind Bethel music, and even more music with Christon Gray. That's the sound of Bethel, a team of writers, singers, musicians, and worshipers whose music provides the soundtrack for contemporary worship services all over. Studio 5 had the honor to sample their sound and hear the story behind it. Open your heart and grab a Kleenex as you hear them.
Your love is devoted, like a ring of solid gold, like a vow that is tested, like a covenant of old. You father the orphan, your kindness makes us whole.
A lot of people think the Holy Spirit is this weird kind of third person of the Trinity. We don't know what he does or what he doesn't do, but he lives inside of us. I also love looking at Jesus' life, finding his Father. He was finding his Father's voice and his Father's eyes, and bam, that was the thing that was refreshing him. And so trying to stay in that place of constant communion is the inspiration, I think, for what we do, because we're pouring out so much,
Yeah. I think, too, like, if God is endless, which he is, right, then there's always new things to explore about him. There's always new vocabulary. There's always something new that he's doing that we get to actually capture, grab onto, and find language for. And so for me, it's like, I love singing about who he is as we discover that.
You father the orphan, your kindness makes us whole, and you shoulder our weakness, and your strength becomes our own. Now you're making me like you.
Everyone's searching for something, whether it's we post something on Instagram and hope we get 100 likes, and then maybe we're happy enough, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like we're petitioning people to tell us who we are. Am I good enough? And we look to all these other things, all these other outlets, when in fact we need the Father to look at us and go, I see who you are. I see who you're made to be. I call that forth and I say, it's good, it's very good, it's beautiful. Who you are is amazing, and I'm proud of you. I think everyone's searching for those affirmations.
Absolutely.
Bethel's kind of known as a culture of freedom, or a culture of the supernatural. Healing and the prophetic are real strong emphasis. So we don't just do that in praying for people or prophesying over people or praying for the sick just through laying on their hands. We do that through music. And so we'll sing songs of deliverance, songs of healing, songs that are the voice of the Lord speaking to people. And I think that's what resonates, because the prophetic ultimately carries hope with it. And I think so many people, especially now, there's so much fear out there, that people are really responding to what we're carrying, I think, because we really believe in a God of hope, and we really carry a strong faith message and hope for the here and now and what God wants to do for cities all across the world.
Worship really is connecting with the Lord. It's about knowing the Lord. It's not just songs saying like, well, this is who God is. It's a, hey, come experience God.
Yeah,
because
people
people want to know God, not just here's some statements that you can say about God, but here, actually come experience Him, see what He's like.
The lyrics are very vertical and singable. It's almost like every song is a conversation with the Lord.
From my mother's womb, you have chosen me. Love has called my name. I've been born again to a family. Your blood flows through my veins.
The Bible says that every person, God desires that all men should be saved. So every person in front of you, you treat them according to that value, which is Jesus came and shed His blood for them. Right. You know, Jesus said that we're called to love others the way God's loved us, and so that's probably the greatest expression of worship, you know, is your life. But I think as you know Him, you begin to have a fondness for every expression of worship, music included.
So I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God.
No longer a slave to fear. What a bold message. Another musician expanding the landscape of Christian music is Christon Gray. He joined forces with Kirk Franklin last year and just released his first album. I caught up with him to talk about his move to the new label and his 10-year journey to becoming the artist he is today. His music is what's playing in my ear.
Do you know who I am? Look at me. Do you know I belong to? No, no.
Hard to believe. For more than half of his career, Christon Gray didn't sing.
I was a rapper for about 8 years, like barely any singing. Occasionally I may hum on a verse or something like that.
They don't see the challenge, no. All they see is talent.
His journey began in Ohio, performing with a group called the Elevationists.
We did very well in Columbus. We had a strong following, and a lot of people would come to the shows. We would minister a lot in prisons. We would do a lot of homeless ministry. Just a passion for evangelism.
Gray was left alone with his music after the group broke up and embarked on his first solo project, Even with Evil With Me, in 2011.
With evil with me, I'm never forsaken. I am weak, but you are strong.
As soon as we put that album out, Swoop contacted me from Collision Records.
He signed with Collision and released School of Roses, a project born from one of the most difficult times of his life.
School of Roses, baby.
Wanna details the temptation and struggles he faced during the start of his career.
It was hard traveling alone a lot. You know, temptation was everywhere. You either want to make a lot of mistakes, or you do make a lot of mistakes, or both. And I think that our industry and the body at large, I don't think we hear enough about what it feels like to go through those struggles. Honesty is the most important part of our salvation. I think people use the term saved as a one-time thing, whereas we have to understand that God is a God who continuously saves us.
That transparency message is in his latest project, the Glory album, his first release with Kirk Franklin's label, and a dream come true.
I would have never been able to tell anybody when I started music that somebody I listened to as a child was going to contact me and tell me he thinks I'm the future of music.
Way from heaven, yeah. Make some noise for Jesus Christ.
Christon's new project, the Glory album, dropped March 11th. Be sure you check it out. Up next, here on Studio 5.
Sometimes I think things and then they don't get sanctified before they slip out.
A look ahead to what happens when pain drowns out the laughter, with one of the most awarded comedians in the country. We're laughing in the dark in the upcoming Studio 5.
Men are so funny when they show up these things. It's very obvious that you lost a bet.
Shonda Pierce is the queen of clean and the most awarded female comedian in the country. She opens up about personal pain, death, and depression.
It's one thing to share your testimony of the goodness of God and the healing that's taken place. It's another to share your testimony as you're being healed.
In an emotional conversation, sure to stir your heart. His music leaves a lifetime of memories, but Daryl Coley is gone. He died recently at age 60. Best known for songs like He's Preparing Me, Beyond the Veil, and When Sunday Comes. I'm honoring his life and legacy with today's final word, a musical one.
Jesus will soothe my troubled mind, and all of my heartaches, every burden, all of my misery, all of my crying, every trial, every tribulation will be left behind. Where
When Sunday comes, Daryl Coley will indeed be missed. That is all for today's Studio 5. Until next time, reach out and touch me on social media at Ephraim Graham on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Be sure to come on back and join us for the next episode of Studio 5.
I'm gonna see Jesus.